It is an understatement to say how integral Hokuri Sazanami has become to the overall plot of Kagurabachi since his early introduction during the Rakuzachi arc. With his very relatable introduction of dealing with his family trauma and overcoming his emotional oppression from his father to stand up to him and become this confident self that we see today, it's obvious why he's become a series favorite. Which is why when one of the potential costs of Hokuri using his sorcery here could end up with him suffering brain damage, let alone not just scary because he could lose sorcery, but lose his entire life, it makes sense. Last chapter, we were introduced to the group of elite warriors known as the Makizumi. They are a small family of shinobi warriors that date back centuries, even before the official establishment of the Kamunabi. By dedicating themselves to their chosen master, they serve as tools to protect and serve and sacrifice their lives for the greater good, which definitely shows Hokuzono's Naruto influence for sure, because this comes up very often in early Naruto, especially during the Zabuza and Haku arc, and it comes up later, please don't crucify me. But these self-sacrificing ninjas plan to essentially act as the main distraction so that way they can build this mandala teleportation and get Hokuri, Somura, and Uruha out of this dangerous situation because their lives are pretty much the most valuable as of right now. With the veteran Hashaku sorcerer dealing in sorcery that is creating giant trees that are basically crushing the entire structure of the temple, and all of these Datenseki crystal warriors are literally just crowding like zombies to fight, we don't all want to die pointless deaths here. It makes much sense to get all of the important VIPs out of Senkutsuji Temple. And the reason why Hokuri is also considered a VIP is because how integral his sorcery and storage facility ability is to what the Kamunabi wants to do to break this 3-year deadlock they've been in with the Hashaku. By making a connection with the Enchanted Blade Wielders, as we saw all the way back in the Rakuzachi arc, the connected person to whatever they have a spiritual connection with can immediately teleport that out of the storage facility. Chihiro did that with Enten, and the goal is to get the Enchanted Blades out of the Hashaku's hands and teleported back into Iruha and Somura's hands, so that way they can get a huge amount of power. However, because of Hokuri's overuse during the Rakuzachi arc, he needs to heal and he can't use his sorcery to its full ability. It's gonna take 30 minutes to heal Hokuri with the ritual that the Makuzumi was doing to him, and unfortunately, they were only able to get through about 10 minutes. However, knowing Hokuri and the way that he is, he does not want to be one of the only people that's putting their lives on the line to help save Somura and Iruha here. So he tries his best to summon its storage power and do the connection thing right now. However, he immediately collapses and passes out because he's nowhere near able to fight at this moment. And Hokuri's dedication is admirable, you have to admit it. But even the Makuzumi member that was with him admits that Hokuri really isn't the one who should be pushing themselves right now. Again, it's the Makuzumi, all of these ninjas that are fighting alongside Somura, that have dedicated their lives and been raised to be self-sacrificing tools. They are much more disposable than people who, if they die, they jeopardize the entire country's stabilization. And it's here that we cut to a short flashback with the Makuzumi 3 years ago when they all met Somura, and we see that similar to Iruha, Somura had standards for his bodyguards that he didn't want them to just be random bland pawns that just bodyguarded him and protected him with no reason whatsoever. He doesn't want to be a privileged old general who needs his ass wiped. He doesn't need all of his needs taken care of in life, even though he is technically disabled. Despite the Makuzami being quote-unquote tools by design, Somura just does not believe in that kind of blind dedication. Somura wants a team of people who don't feel bad about imposing on one another, who can really lean on each other in times of struggle, not just some team of ninjas that will recklessly give their lives and will have to be replaced the next day. And this just continues to solidify how just great of a person the Enchanted Blade Wielder Somura Seiichi is. There's a reason why Shiba let Somura be the only person that actually got a chance to see Rokuhira's hiding spot and actually meet Chihiro as a child, because he is one of the greatest swordsmen to ever do it. I mean, there's a reason why Somura is so legendarily regarded by all of the people that he meets, to the point that he's even being looked up to as a role model by Chihiro Rokuhira himself, of all people. Even after Somura and the others do escape later on in the chapter, he has to have a full screaming match and argument back and forth with Iruha, because Iruha just wants Somura to stay put and keep himself alive, but Somura does not want to let other people give up their lives for him if he's not fighting alongside them. Now, to Iruha, a wielder who also just lost all of their friends slash bodyguards of 3 years, I mean, no one is going to be able to relate to Somura any more than him, especially after these ninjas just put up all of this big fight to get these guys out of here. It would be disrespectful to their deaths if we didn't just run away right now. Uruha understands the plight of the curse of being an enchanted blade wielder more than anybody. The Makuzami's deaths will mean something if they're able to survive and keep fighting to a next day. However, if they all die, not only will the Makuzuma's deaths be pointless, but Somura's will also be pointless because the Hishaku will just get an enchanted blade on their side and probably kill way more people than they could have beforehand. And I don't know about any of you guys, but the way that Somura keeps getting talked about as well as built up with all of these different flashbacks and people glazing him, I definitely see a lot of death flags around him, and they're waving and they're going high. They're raising high. But it's a good thing that they all escaped Senkutsuji and Uruha convinced Somura to not go back to the temple, right? Anyway, just going back in time for a little bit. After that Makizumi flashback, Somura does his best to try and raise the Makizumi into a relatable team of friends that can lean on each other. It's just not going to be the case as much as Somura wants to believe it. He declares alongside them that they're going to tear them to shreds, basically meaning that he's going to fight to the death and fight alongside them, even though it's clearly a losing battle with the amount of being outnumbered that they are, I should say. Somura is more than willing to give his all to fight against the crushing force of the never-ending Datenseki zombies, we might as well call them. That's what it feels like. We're on about round 10 and they're about to call hellhounds. Not only that, the veteran sorcerer of the Hishaku is just basically destroying an entire temple with his spells. So it shows that he is super duper powerful, and he is clearly going to be a much more endgame boss for Chihiro or someone else to fight. Thankfully though, the enchanted blade wielders that did spend a lot of time together, specifically Uruha and Somura, Uruha knows Somura well enough that not only does he realize that Somura is never going to leave this battlefield voluntarily, he pulls a trick to get Somura to get teleported out of there that probably only someone that spent years alongside battles and war fields with this person would be able to pull off. It's no surprise, and we've already talked about it, that the Hishaku's tree sorcery is just coming from all different angles. And one, trees don't have any will or hostility, so it's already hard for Somura to keep track of. But there's all this noise, all this smoke, all these different people are fighting in the midst of this group battle, so Somura can't use any of his echolocation at this point. He has to rely on hostility alone. So Somura, relying on his bloodlust and relying on other people's bloodlust to lead his attacks, Somura slashes and suddenly ends up being blocked by Uruha of all people, because Uruha increased and amplified his bloodlust. Not exactly sure how you would do that, but I'm not a swordsman in wartime, so maybe I'm just not familiar with the method. They're able to trick Somura into the mandala's range and get all three of them out of there, as I talked earlier about in the chapter. And that brings us back to the Makuzumi flashback one more time, because despite Somura doing his best to try to change the ninjas who they are as people, we remember the quote that they gave him when he first brought all of this up. They don't need Somura's empathy. They will all die as tools, and they will die as tools regardless of what he says. They've always intended to do that from the beginning. And I love just this harking back to the disparity between Uruha and Somura, because one, it shows at first, just one, how good of people Rokuhiro was able to recruit to fight alongside him in the Seitei War and give these enchanted blade wielders. Of course, we don't know the other two, so I can't speak for all of them, but Somura and Uruha are pretty cool. However, it is very interesting how different they are in times of crisis and situation, because again, while Uruha is much more political in the decisions that he makes, understanding that his life is much more valuable than these people that are willing to give it up, Somura relies much more on emotions and impulsively doing what he believes to be the right thing in the right moment. However, it's ironic that Somura of all people is this character who is all about Buddhism and following enlightenment. He cut his eyes just because he didn't want to have worldly attachments. However, it's these worldly desires that keep him acting this way and keep him acting irrationally, because someone that's reached enlightenment would probably be much closer to Iruha's stance on the situation. It proves Shibo right from all the way back in that flashback where he met Chihiro, that no matter what Somura does to try and prove his otherworldliness and his dedication to Buddha, his worldly attachments will always keep him down to earth. In the final moment of the chapter, when Somura almost goes to just risk his life anyway, which would probably be a really stupid decision, thankfully, Hakuri awakes and manages to struggle through a storage facility spell one single moment, and not one single moment later, in a flash, Somura is able to reconnect with Tobimune, his enchanted blade. Whether or not there will be lasting consequences to Hikori for this is unknown. He might even be able to do this one more time and get Aruha's blade, Yukimori, back. However, with what we know with the possible brain damage, we'll put a pin in that and just hope Hikori is okay. Because now, with Tobimune in his grasp, Somura is able to level the playing field at Senkutsuji instantly, figuratively, and literally. He uses that first technique, Crow, and within moments, the battlefield is completely flooded in feathers that just cut all of his enemies and the different trees in half. Somura has regained the handicap in this fight and has shifted the momentum of Senkutsuji with one attack. However, I'm curious to see how the veteran Hishaku member responds. Is he going to retreat? Is he going to keep fighting and stand against an enchanted blade wielder on his own? The main reason I ask some of these questions is because the Hishaku have clearly been planning this for a while. Even though you could argue that John Hishaku Yura admitted that they can fail because it's all for Hirohiko's development, I don't think they would be willing to lose this 3-year power struggle that easily, and it makes me wonder that could we still potentially lose Somura? Could we still potentially lose Aruha? We are not out of the woods yet. Hirohiko is clearly also waiting with no arms for a blade himself, and Somura's death flags have not lowered whatsoever in my mind. So I'm just keeping an attentive eye on everything that's going on. We will just have to really see what transpires next. I mean, a lot of the community has actually theorized that one of the other enchanted blade wielders that we have yet to dive into may even be a traitor and may be on the side of the Hishaku. We have no idea what's going on with them yet, and I do think it's weird that why would they only focus on these 2 temples? I have to imagine they made attacks on the other 2. We've only seen 2 to 3 Hishaku members, and there's apparently 10. Are we just gonna cut in another chapter to a destroyed temple and a new wielder? Or maybe like we'll cut to a different temple where Shiba was the only person required to fight off the Hishaku member, and we get to see a 1v1 with Shiba? I mean, we can dream, right? My main question is, what do you guys think is going to happen in the future? Obviously, big chapter, and I'm definitely excited to see that a enchanted blade is back on our side. How long it will remain on our side and how long until the Hishaku get their own advantage, we'll just have to wait and see. What do you think about one of the members being a potential traitor? All I know is I'll be here covering it every week, so make sure you hit that like button if you enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end, and subscribe if you don't want to miss any future Kagurabachi videos or any other videos or series that you may read weekly or monthly. And I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.